Let's move on to the Arizona Cardinals. As I'm putting all this up on the board, will you tell me what your thoughts are on the Arizona Cardinals this year? I know personally, I feel like this might be the team that's the odd man out a little bit in a loaded division, but what are your thoughts here?
Man, so that's the thing, is that they are an odd man out, but they checked all the boxes. They had a really good offseason. I am still a very, very big believer in J.J. Watt and what his veteran leadership can do in a locker room for a lot of young guys. The departure of Pat P, it's going to hurt. That secondary is going to be hurting a little bit. But overall, the team got better, but my record doesn't indicate that. And it's hard for me to line it up. The only way that I can justify it is saying that this is such a crowded, tough, and cramped division where some of the other guys, the 49ers, injuries, let's say that those get better. The Rams' acquisition of Stafford, that would greatly improve them in my eyes. And we still have Seattle. I see them as fourth in the division. I see them as a very good team, though. Really looking to see Kyler explode. But also, if he doesn't, that kind of starts to fall back on Cliff, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't agree more with the Cliff thing. I really couldn't. I look at this team and you know, just looking at, you know, they did do everything right. Yeah. And they did put it together. But listen, actually, you know, I'm going to go off script a little bit because I wanted to bring this up a little bit later in the conversation, but I have this stat. We're going to put it up on the screen right now. This is the target share for Deandre Hopkins and Christian Kirk. That's not right. That shouldn't be the target. Like it should not
it's
be in that
where
little
you line
bubble.
them up on X and Y.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they don't move, and they have the exact same route tree. There's very limited variation at all. I mean, you see, DeAndre Hopkins should be threatening every single part of the field. And granted, I get there aren't a lot of routes that really let you go, you know, the exact opposite side of the field. I get that, but the intensity in one specific spot and really not branching out a whole lot anywhere else or not having any consistency anywhere else, I think that's a huge miss in an offense that Cliff Kingsbury is supposed to be this revolution. And to be totally honest, I don't think I believed that. I don't think you believed that.
No.
I think a lot of people didn't believe that, but that he was built by the Arizona Cardinals. That's how it was supposed to be sold to the fans.
He was the young
offensive mind coming from college. Never mind he got fired and he had Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback and had a losing season. Never mind any of that. But we're bringing him in. We're bringing Kyler Murray in, and we're going to have a special offense. And it's not right now. It's not. And you know, before, you know, I want to bring in one more stat that I do think is interesting that kind of speaks to, you know, maybe the other side of that conversation a little bit, because I do think I will give him credit that he has adjusted his game plan a little bit here and there. And what I mean by that is last year he ran 2 tight end sets 31% of offensive plays. That's not air raid. That's the opposite of air raid. Air raid is 4 wide receivers and usually no tight ends. He ran 2 tight end set because he didn't have the wide receivers to match a four wide receivers, even if he, you know, maybe he just doesn't believe in it altogether, but at least he's not trying to put a square peg in a round hole. So like, I'll give him credit for that, but it's not a creative offense. I do believe the offense lives and dies by by Kyler Murray. And we actually just did an interview with Nick, a fan, hopefully he's listening, and he mentioned it, you know, Arizona he basically said exactly my thoughts on Arizona Cardinals. It's all Kyler Murray. I do believe that. I think it's all Kyler Murray.
No, the offense will go as far as he is allowed to, and I honestly think this offensive scheme is holding him back.
Yeah.
You know, I like the way that they do the RPOs. He had over, I think it was 1,200 yards off of RPOs. That goes into his rushing and passing stats off of those plays. I mean, he's electric. You know, it speaks for itself. DeAndre Hopkins' first year, he accumulated almost 160 targets for a first. That is insane.
It's ridiculous.
And to think that, you know, so that's why whenever you showed the target distribution chart, I will give a little bit of leniency with D-Hops. But then again, it is D-Hops. I mean, we're talking at worst, number 3 best wide receiver in the NFL for me.
Yeah,
at worst, exactly.
There's an argument he's the best.
This is a guy who does more than just 2-yard stop routes, who does more than just swing routes, who does more than just digs and ends. He can go anywhere. He can take the number 1 and make them look like they shouldn't play football anymore.
Yeah.
That's just what he does. I want to really see them get going. Mm-hmm. It feels like they're being held back. This should be the year that they blow it open and they really start to make the next step forward.
Yeah, listen, I absolutely agree. And really, you can see it right here. D-Hop's 115 receptions, 1,400 yards, and 6 touchdowns. The rest of the Cardinals wide receivers, 143 receptions, 1,477 yards, and 9 touchdowns. That's crazy that like how close that is. That should be that close, right? Like,
no, that's not the ideal way that you want the distribution to go. But then again, if I had D-Hops and I had an arm like Kyler did, exactly. So it kind of lines up in my head, hand in hand. I just it really hurts me to know that they've gotten better in areas, and I want to see them be better, but the record doesn't indicate that.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Moving forward, I mentioned the 2 tight end sets and how the offense doesn't really match. Yeah, let's look at their depth chart right now, and specifically wide receiver. Obviously Deandre Hopkins, but they did bring in an AJ Green to add to that offense, and they brought in a Rondell Moore in the second round. Andy Isabella probably a bust, right? Christian Kirk. Probably going to be a starter, but also I don't think it has the ceiling that a lot of people thought they had. It's crazy that they spent 4 second-round picks on wide receivers because that's what DeAndre Hopkins went for too. It's ridiculous that's how their wide receiver core works out. But it speaks to what Cliff Kingsbury wants to do, and maybe this is the year he really gets to do what he wants to do, which is run that air raid for wide receivers, play the you can still have the RPOs and all those other things. There's creative ways you can do that with a Kyler Murray and also spread the field. Maybe this is the year. You have AJ Green on the outside. You have Christian Kirk on the inside. You have Rondell Moore on the inside. You have DeAndre Hopkins on the outside. Like there's a lot of things that can be done.
Rondell Moore is the dude, year? Man.
Is this the year?
It could be.
It could be. It really could.
You both don't believe that, though.
No. Don't believe this is the year for air raid system. I don't believe this is the moment that the air raid system really gets introduced in the NFL in a real way. I think I've seen it enough to know that it doesn't work consistently. I'm not going to say it can't work at all, but consistently, I do have questions. Just while we're looking at this depth chart, I also have questions about the running back situation. You look at you look at Drake is gone, and Drake underperformed. Really, the running backs in general underperformed. If you take away Kyler Murray from the rushing stats,
it's atrocious.
It's below average. It certainly is.
They're a bottom 20 team. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. They're a bottom 20 rushing team. If you take away, it's actually 18th in the NFL in yards per carry when it's excluding Murray, but every other stat excluding Murray is worse than that. So I mean, it's not good by any means. What are we expecting from the running back situation here? With obviously, you have a Edmonds, who I do like, out of a small school, Fordham, I believe, who has a chance. Obviously, they brought in James Conner from Pittsburgh, but I do believe he is over the hill a little bit. Benjamin, 7th round pick last year that a lot of people like. What are your thoughts here?
I mean, I think that it's going to be one of those feed the hot hand things. I like Chase Edmonds when it comes to maybe a late round like fantasy PPR kind of move, but when I'm looking at actual product on the field, I could see James Conner doing in the single back formation, but they really don't line up a lot of that. They run a lot of heavy shotgun. You mentioned the 2 tight end sets. Yes, they will do that, but I just don't believe James Conner's the guy for that.
No, I don't believe so either.
And that's kind of the problem.
I think they took a Kenyon Drake who went over the hill, and I certainly believe like wholeheartedly he is over the hill and really just fell off a cliff last year. I think they sidestepped to a James Conner. They didn't improve, in my opinion. They sidestepped because James Conner, I believe, is he's tapped too as far as
I think he could high end production. Than what Kenyon Drake wasn't, but then again, I don't see it eclipsing much. Like you said,
I don't either. I think every time I saw Chase Edmonds on the field, he was so much more explosive than a Kenyon Drake. I expect Chase Edmonds to be the guy, but every time Chase Edmonds has gotten, the full grunt of the workload, he's been injured soon after. So there's some injury concerns there. I add on top of that, do you know how many rushing attempts he has in the inside the 5-yard line?
Oh, I don't know.
1. In his entire NFL career.
Runs a lot there.
Yeah, but in his entire NFL career, Chase Edmonds has had 1 rushing attempt inside the 5-yard line. That's crazy. That takes away. Yeah, exactly. That takes away his fantasy outlook. Certainly to me, anyway. And you just wonder. It's just an interesting conversation. I think there can be fantasy value here if you hit on the right guy. For me, it's going to be Edmonds or Benjamin for free. I think I will probably take a shot at an Benjamin super late / free in our keeper league that goes 20 rounds, exactly. In that range. That's what I'm talking about. But yeah, I think is there value here, or should we stay away?
No, I would stay away because I just don't see, even if they hit the ceiling that I have in my head, if they hit that ceiling, it still does not line up with where they're being taken.
Yeah.
Take someone like Benjamin late. When it comes to their wide receivers, on the other hand, I would dip into some of those depending on where they go.
Yeah. No, and I do get that. Just taking a look at the offseason at a glance here. Their biggest move was trading for a Rodney Hudson, and obviously they.
Damn, you said Rodney Hudson over J.J. Watt.
Well, yeah, J.J. Watt is a great player and all of these things, but Rodney Hudson, I think, still has real juice in the tank. Granted, both of them are over 30, so you can say what you want to say. Rodney Hudson was arguably a top 5 center last year.
Yes.
J.J. Watt was not arguably a top 5 anything last year.
Injuries.
Yeah, okay, but injuries the past 3 years.
I get what you're saying.
Come on, guys. I don't hear what I'm not saying. J.J. Watt is an all-time great. I love J.J. Watt. This is not me shitting on J.J. Watt. If you knew me in his prime, you would know how much I fucking love J.J. Watt. He's one of my all-time favorite players of all time. He really might be in the conversation for favorite non-quarterback, non-Dolphin in the NFL, period. But at this point in his career,
contribute still. I do not think he is done.
I'm not saying he's done. But I do think him, AJ Green, Malcolm Butler, all of these additions.
Oh, yeah. AJ Green and Malcolm Butler.
Older guy. Yeah, I put them all in the same, same tier as far as their ability to produce. JJ Watt brings a little bit more from a leadership perspective, I would say. And I'm not taking anything away from those other guys, but JJ Watt is JJ Watt. So I certainly think, he can add some pieces. I get what you're saying. He can add some pieces, but he's not going to be an every down threat. He's maybe a third down rusher or things like that. I don't think he's a guy that's.
You think he's that limited this year?
I don't think he is. Yeah, I don't think he's a guy that we're going to hear a bunch of I don't know, and I could be wrong on this. But yeah, I don't think he's going to be the guy. I'll put it that way.
I don't think he. I mean, they have Chandler Jones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chandler Jones.
He had injuries last year, but yeah.
Chandler Jones is the guy there. But J.J. Watt, man, listen, those names on paper, a lot of those, I wish they could have been able to keep Hassan Reddick, honestly.
Yeah, Hassan Reddick is a great player.
Exactly. I think J.J. Watt's got a lot of stuff left in the tank.
Okay, so you think he has a lot more than I do?
He has 2 years of elite play left.
Elite, yeah. I think his elite play is long gone. His elite play is long gone. So he's 2 years of serviceable play left. I think it's
injuries that have kind of strayed away from that.
At this point, those injuries piled up for 3 straight years. I mean, come on, that's gonna
very random.
That's gonna hold up.
How do you feel about a Von Miller then? Age-wise, they line up close to the same.
I think Von Miller probably has more in the tank. I do, because his injuries have been. I
would rather have a Von Miller right now than a J.J. Watt. But I'm saying when it comes to both of them being injured and aging.
Yeah, neither of them are going to be the top of their game.
JJ,
you always give me shit for being too quick to toss older players.
J.J. Watt is not a top 5 defensive lineman anymore like he was.
Yeah, but he's not.
I can admit that.
I would say he's not 15. He's not top 15. He's not top 20. I wouldn't even say. There's a lot of good ones in the NFL.
There's a lot of great young ones. There really are. So, I mean, it's hard for me to put a number beside it, but I do think that he can contribute to them.
Okay.
More than just a locker room presence.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I'll give you that. But I will stand by, I think the big signing, the big move was Rodney Hudson. I think Rodney Hudson helps their team more than anybody else in the free agent department.
That offensive line needs it for Kyler, yes.
Yeah, and their offensive line, it's quietly good. I think it's ranked 13th by Stat Football Analysis. And that's,
and then throw in a Rodney Hudson, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Rodney Hudson adds to that. They also, I believe, drafted one at some point in the draft. So you look at that, and that's one of my questions. Will the addition of aging vets at key positions pay off? I don't know. I do think, did this team quietly just get older? I mean, I don't know.
They did.
They got much statistically, they definitely did. But
they did.
Are we worried?
Can a Malcolm Butler step up and really play? There were a lot of times for the Titans where he wasn't there's a reason that they let him walk.
Yeah.
You can't afford to pay the old aging guy that money that he was for. And a lot of Malcolm Butler haters out there would say that the man made a career off of one play.
Yeah, I don't think that's accurate, but he certainly he made a name for himself on one play.
He made a name for himself and was able to get his payday because of that.
He is more of a household name than he would have been, but he's still for the years that he was a starter for the Titans, he deserved to be a starter. I will say that.
His rise to fame at the Patriots was after he got that catch, the interception. I mean, he was very, very good on that team for many years.
Yeah, I do agree. Yes. I do agree. Let's take a look at their draft. Just a quick glance here. First round, getting a Zaven Collins at 16 overall, which I think we were both surprised on. Obviously, we did the live stream.
Very surprised.
Certainly surprised us, but The more I looked at it, the more it made sense to me. Obviously, this is 2 years in a row they drafted a linebacker in the first round, so we'll see how that plays out. But I think that's how they want their defense to run. They want it to run through the middle of their field. And Zaven Collins is very versatile, can do a lot of different things. Obviously, Rondale Moore we mentioned. Marco Wilson, I think is quietly a really good corner. I know somebody who I really respect, and Chris Sims. He had him as a top 5 corner in his rankings or whatever. And granted, that's take that for what it is.
Marco Wilson.
He wasn't a top 5 in my rankings. I'm not
Wilson
saying
I do not like Marco Wilson.
Okay, fair enough. I'm just saying, like, there's all these people out there that think he's really good. So that's all I'm
good
adding.
At throwing shoes and losing games against LSU.
Okay, his brain. Listen, he might not be mature, but he's a good talent. He's a good physical talent. Is all I was saying. I love how you say stuff like that, and it makes me want to defend him more. I don't know what. I don't know what it is in my brain that like immediately wants to fight you, like not fight you, but like
speaking on behalf of Florida fans and their disdain for him because
I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine.
Colin, you're out there, bro. I hate him too. It's okay, man. It's okay.
Just interesting to say. I wanted to throw that in there. But yeah, a good draft overall. I do think I mentioned they drafted an offensive lineman. I was wrong. They didn't draft an offensive lineman. It would have been, I think, a better move. And I think cornerback was probably their biggest need. They got one in the 4th. We'll see how that works out. This team is good. I do think it got better. Did it get marketably better? I think that's kind of the theme of what we've been talking about. Do you have anything else to add here before we get into like the fantasy talk here?
No, run it.
We're good. All right, let's throw in the fantasy conversation. While I'm throwing it on the screen right now for you guys, I'm going to let Jacob look at it for the first time, and I'm just going to kind of talk through some of my thoughts here. Kyler Murray obviously getting he actually took a step down in passing yards. But still 4,000 passing yards, gave him a huge step up in rushing yards. So totals over 5,000 total yards, 30 passing touchdowns, 8 in the I gave him pretty good stats. Maybe I overblew it a little bit. Let me know what you think there, but I do think this is assuming health, by the way, and I think a big conversation, something that I wanted to bring up, but I'll bring it up now here. When you look at the splits from Kyler Murray from pre-injury, he injured his shoulder in week 11 to the rest of the season, it's marketable. It really is. Pre-injury, he had 9 rushes per game, 7.6 yards per carry, 62% success rate. Post-injury, 6.1 rushing yard or rushes per game, 5.1 yards per carry, 60% success rate. That's significantly different. And then pre-injury passing,
played a little different.
He had 7.6 yards per attempt, 3.7 sack rate. That's pre-injury. Post-injury, he had 6.6 yards per attempt, so a whole yard down, and 5.8 sack rate, so significantly higher sack rate as well. The injury really did affect him, and it's one of those things that I don't think was talked about a whole lot during the season. It's something that I kind of really found going back and researching it and all these things. I think I'm assuming health for the entire season, and I think if you take the split from the first 11 games and take those numbers and bring it out for 17 games, it's going to be these kind of numbers, and that's where my thought process came for these numbers.
Well, and I also have to add in that other game. I know that doesn't make an overall big difference, but then again, we did the math on the 5,000 yards. So, primarily 5,000 yards for any quarterback is a landmark milestone to hit. Guys like Drew Brees kind of made it more common in household, but before that, it was unheard of. So now you do it, it averages out to about 270 yards-ish a game. That's really not all that crazy. So at first I saw that and was like, that's semi-MVP year. Adding a few more touchdowns, that's MVP for Kyler.
I gave him 38 touchdowns. Both rushing and passing, 38 touchdowns, 1,100 yards.
I mean, it's impressive.
That's a lot.
It is. That's a damn good year. That's a top 10 quarterback year.
Oh, I think he is a top 10 quarterback. So absolutely.
And that's where it's at.
And this is him again. Granted, I did this and still have him winning 8 games in the season.
You have D-Hop's receptions right around the same where it was. The yards kind of go up a little bit more.
I pretty much copy and pasted last year and then adjusted for not copy and pasted, but gave it very similar market share, and then adjusted obviously the number of yards based on last year, and obviously the 4,000 passing yards. That's the piece
Rondale
of pie
Moore with a 61 reception, 600 yard, 5 touchdowns. That is really good.
Like that?
That is really good for a rookie.
I thought that was a reasonable milestone for him to hit too.
I think that's really good. I think that's something that he could do that has Christian Kirk going. That might lose my job.
That puts him in the slot. That has him in my little world. That has him winning the slot receiver receiver role because that's what he has to play. He has to play slot, right? Obviously, Christian Kirk might be playing slot, might play outside. It depends on what happens. Obviously, he lined up majority in slot, as did Andy Isabella. I don't foresee him having a huge issue fighting off Andy Isabella. I also added in the possibility, like if you look at all the wide receivers that got some stats, I'm projecting more 4 wide receiver sets. I'm projecting them to really give the air raid system a shot. I really am. So yeah, I certainly have that expectation. Gave Max Williams, the tight end, fair numbers. I feel like for the most part.
That's some people. I think you might have if this reaches the Arizona Cardinal Nation and whatnot. They're very high on Max Williams.
Yeah,
they're very high on some of looking at his fantasy production going forward.
I think there's an interesting conversation there with Max Williams because if you look at what Dan Arnold did last year and Max Williams was on that roster, there's really no other tight end that's really on that roster that we can really expect to take a step.
Food out of the mouth.
Yeah, exactly. And granted, maybe there is, and maybe there's a guy that ends up doing that, and that I don't know about. It's certainly possible. But last year they ran a lot of 2 tight end sets. I mentioned 31% of their snaps 2 tight end sets. I'm expecting that to go down. I'm expecting Max Williams to be the main tight end on the forward, on there. But you brought in AJ Green for a reason. You brought in a Rondo Moore for a reason. Obviously, Deandre Hopkins is going to eat. Obviously, Christian Kirk, he's not just going to go away completely. Andy Isabella, I think, will be the odd man out. He's proven to me that he's a little bit of a bust. So we'll see what happens there. So yeah, Max Williams, I actually do like Max Williams, the talent. I remember watching him last year and thinking he was, I didn't think he was marketably worse than a Dan Arnold, who I felt like got all the praise for that team. So yeah, I certainly felt like I gave him respect, but also I'm just not projecting the tight end to be a huge part of this offense, I guess, is what I would say. But now that you mention it, and I hope that some Cardinals fans really do get to see this and can put their thoughts in, because I'm not against, adjusting the numbers. As I said at the top of the show, the whole point of us doing this is I'm doing this is my kind of rough draft of the yards. I did put a lot of thought into it, and I did put my research, but I'm not this is not my final product. So if you're in the comments shitting on me, that's fine, but hey, just let me know what you think. You don't have to really shit on me, you know what I mean? Because this is not my final product, and that is certainly something to think about for Max Williams there. If I should adjust that, and I think a lot of it's going to have to do with what formations do they run. Are they going to go to more 4 wide receiver?
Well, if they do run that and they do commit to this air raid, I mean it would cut him off, and that's kind of what I was thinking there. Anywhere else you want to go with this? No, I like it a lot.
Chase Edmonds, James Conner, conversation. I
didn't even mention them just because I guess it solidified it in my head that I'm not touching them. I
gave them 30 and 22%, so I did give Chase Edmonds the respect that he is the number 1. But I split it close enough down the middle to where, I really disrespected James Conner as far as production because I gave him. That's honestly now just looking at it, I'm gonna have to change that. I'm looking at 22% rushing attempts, 15% rushing yards, and that comes out to 125 attempts for 388 yards. That's not right, so I'll have to adjust that a little bit.
Yeah,
but
there'll be a little tweaking. But at the end of the day, I'm looking at that fantasy points per game over there too, and I know that can be tweaked a little bit north or south. But at 13, looking at Chase Edmonds, man, you just can't do that.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah,
and you gotta look at those weeks where it fluctuates, and he does get that touchdown, or he does get that little bust of a play, and goes up to 20. And then there's weeks where he's gonna hit
3,
it could
8.
Be bad.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's good. There's gonna be the ebb and flow there, and but maybe the running back. It could be interesting in if you're running that 0 running back system, and you can take a shot at one of these guys, but. Yeah, no, that's not the system I run. I try and draft my running backs early and often. Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to say before we close the book there on Arizona?
Close them.